Welcome to the Building Efficiency Resources podcast, the BERcast, the podcast that's designed for the everyday working building performance professional working within the energy efficiency and sustainability industry. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Xavier Walter about the opportunities in the Inflation Reduction Act for the building performance industry. We are very fortunate to have an esteemed colleague with us. We've got Xavier Walter with the Building Performance Association here with Sandy and I. Hey, Xavier, how you been?
Good, Chris. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys.
That's good. I see that you're still hanging out there at the farm out in West Virginia, huh?
Yeah, we had a great time. I'm really glad you and Uriah got to stay with us and enjoy the weekend. We had a blast. It was awesome.
Yeah, it is such a cool spot. If anybody is passing through West Virginia, I highly recommend hitting up Xavier and going and checking out Camp Holly because it is really just one of the most gorgeous spots throughout the entirety of West Virginia that I saw while I was in there delivering some energy code trainings in the state of West Virginia in partnership with BPA. So thanks again for that opportunity, Xavier, for sure.
Yeah, it was awesome. We did a lot of really good work on the ground, in the three cities. I appreciate you guys getting in there and getting to meet with the code officials and the builders and the weatherization agencies working there. It means a lot to us to get folks, of your caliber out here to give us some great training.
That's awesome. Well, so Xavier, diving right into it, the reason why we wanted to have you on the podcast is as most of our listeners are probably aware of, the most monumental package of legislation impacting the building performance, energy efficiency, renewable energy sectors was signed into law last summer, summer of 2022. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act. Or the IRA, as we're going to refer to it. And the IRA has a lot of provisions that could impact all of our careers. And I think most HERS raters, they kind of jumped right to the thing that typically impacts their builders the most, which is the 45L home energy tax credit for residential new construction. As I'm sure everybody knows, the 45L was renewed and is now tied to Energy Star certified homes for the base level of tax credit. And then there's an advanced credit for homes that meet the Zero Energy Ready Homes program. But honestly, y'all already know about that.
Let's not forget the 25C. There's a $150 energy audit credit under the 25C tax provision, and the DOE is just recently released some information that shows that ResNet HERS raters are able to play that role. So if they were to go do an energy audit on an existing home, their customer can get a rebate for that in the amount, or a tax credit for $150.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, Xavier, that's kind of the stuff that we wanted to pick your brain about, because like I say, I think that in some ways the ResNet community has almost been myopically focused only on the 45L, but really the 45L it's kind of just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more that came out in the IRA that could be truly transformational for the building performance industry. Maybe before we jump into it, if you could just give a little bit of pitch about, BPA, the organization, and yourself and your role with BPA.
Thanks. Yeah, I first started participating with the association, over 10 years ago. We started over 30 years ago as the Affordable Comfort Institute. Later years, we became Home Performance Coalition. And just a few years ago, we merged with a bunch of different entities from around the country that focused on residential energy efficiency and became the Building Performance Association. And we really are the industry association in and around residential energy efficiency. But with that being said, we have practitioners from all areas, from new home construction to code compliance, net zero, passive house. We really want to have a place for everybody to convene and meet and pitch a wide tent.
Okay, so whereas maybe historically we would have thought of ACI being principally, really focused on the existing retrofit market. It sounds like BPA is taking a more of a broad industry approach, and really trying to be a thought leader and a representative for the broader constituency of professionals working within the building performance industry. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't say that better myself. We want to make sure that we fill the gaps within the marketplace in its entirety. And that can be, as when new construction, if or when new construction slows down, raters find that they want to fill gaps in workload. The residential home market is a perfect opportunity for that. And a lot of raters have really good construction-based skill sets that can help do project management and quality control, as it relates to existing retrofits. So we want to make sure that the worker on the ground has the resources that they need through education, training, our conferences, and make sure that a lot of this federal money you're talking about gets to where it needs to go while not repeating the mistakes of the past, and serves that worker and serves that business owner. So that's kind of what we try to grease the skids where we can in those areas.
Okay, well, I'm really excited that BER and BPA have started to kind of tag team a little bit here on some projects, and we're really excited to be working with Xavier and his organization. I attended a couple of regional ACI conferences back in the day, probably about 10 years ago. But frankly speaking, Uriah and I, the co-owners of BER, kind of got pretty focused on our narrow lane of ResNet ratings for about 10 years. Sandy, did you have any touchstone with ACI or with BPA prior to the last handful of months?
Well, I've known Xavier for quite a long time, back from a former life for both of us.
Yep.
And I with a former employer, we did do quite a bit of actual existing residential. So I do have some experience with it, not a ton with ACI, but I'm looking forward to this coming up event coming up with the Building Performance Association, and we are a partner now, and we're looking forward to really participating in the conversation, and along with working with Xavier and his team, to bring forth all these great things that are going on. So it's an exciting time, and I think that excuse me. I think ResNet in general has been, a lot focused on, new construction. And I think the opportunity is way bigger in residential and, retrofit. And I think that, this is an exciting time because I think it's going to open up a lot of doors with all the things that are going on between not only just the programs, but workforce development and all those things. So I think this is an exciting time to be involved in what we all do.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome.
I think we, I saw a lot of value, speaking for myself and growing up in the business as an auditor and a contractor, having my feet in both the existing home and the new home camps really gave me the flexibility that I needed to be successful and be the true energy expert in the room. Because the same builder that needs you to walk them around and show them grade 1 versus grade 3 insulation, or finding those preliminary air leakages into the home, the way the framing is placed, all of that same behavior applies in an existing home market. So in New Jersey, when we transferred energy codes from 2009 to 2015, when the code officials woke up, just like they are doing here in West Virginia, so they need to find somebody with a blower door. And who has that blower door? Well, raters have those blower doors, and weatherization assistance providers have those blower doors. So it's a really nice, it's a really nice tie in between the two, because it's the same person with the same tool doing almost the same job. And we all need each other because the volume of work here is, astronomical. We're looking at $8.4 billion with a B for residential rebates, and in energy audits and quality control is embedded all throughout the DOE guidance. And raters and BPI HEP energy auditors are the two credentials that DOE has specifically called out to do this type of work. So we need to get together. How can we best do that? How can we best?
So listen up,
serve...
raters. You hear that? you all could be one of the referenced professional designations that can participate in a whole new opportunity that really, it's kind of always been there, but for a while there, it was kind of like, well, you had to be both a rater to do new construction stuff, and then you had to be a BPI professional in order to do existing home stuff. And it turns out, we're potentially going to have a much bigger opportunity just with the resident HERS index, or sorry, the resident HERS rater designation by itself. So that's really exciting.
It's
Well, go
I
ahead.
mean, it's definitely, it's a great opportunity, right? I mean, where does this kind of opportunity come in the residential new construction industry? I mean, really, I mean, I've been doing this a long time at a high level with big rating companies and, a national, and, I haven't seen an 8 point plus billion-dollar opportunity in my, almost 20 years in this industry. So, Xavier, you make an awesome point. With the old saying, when opportunity knocks, don't ask the questions, open the door.
And let's talk about training. There's a lot of opportunity for, we know we have to scale up, right, to accommodate a lot of this. And, raters and energy auditors alike need to continue their education and get more sharp in their tools. And as we bring in modeling and the various software programs and the ways of project management, whether it's a whole house approach or just a single measure, all of that is best understood through continuing education. So, we're able to, as an association, connect the ecosystem with great training when they need it, where they need it, like we did in West Virginia 3 weeks ago. Like, we initially had funding for building science principles training that we did all over the state already once before. And in the stakeholder process, we figured out, well, we just made this rule change. And I know it's not the only state to have that happen, right? We need to get that training. So we were able to turn on a dime and bring in some of the nation's best codes training that I took 5 years ago myself with Chris. So I saw Chris and I went through the IECC 2018 Plans Examiner course at a ResNet conference. And now we can deploy that, and because it fills that need. If we just need blower door testing, we have manufacturers and distributors going on site and providing turnkey business opportunities with blowing machines and vacuums and the foam guns. I mean, for 25 grand, a rater can start, honestly, a retrofit company. Starting packages before we talk about the box truck or trailer, or,
Sure.
just the basic gear and, the OSHA gear, your safety, your PPE, your caulk, your foam, your stock, it's 25 grand. The barrier of entry is small. We've already got raters doing it all over the country. We organize state by state. And in some of our states, we have prominent raters within the industry taking a leadership role in communicating with the state energy office on how that money gets spent. So we want to make sure,
important.
Yeah, to get that local voice, and who better to speak for the industry in that state and to kind of provide input and technical assistance on how that money gets delivered to the ground, because it's up to the states how they administer it. The feds have their guidance, right? But it's up to the states on how they administer it. So, we need the raters again now to kind of say, because they've been at it for a while. They've seen the ebbs and flows of programs and utility programs and tax programs and local, state, national, what have you. They can help that communication of that in a real big way. So, if you're in a state and you want to have a say, go to our website at BPA building-performance.org and sign up for at least the newsletters and see what's happening in your place, and volunteer to be a leader. We need your help.
I know if I was a rater, Xavier, I would be all over this. You know what I mean? If I was out doing HERS ratings, because to me, there's never been a better opportunity in our industry, and all three of us have been in this industry for a long time. And when I look at it, retrospectively, like I would have never even dreamed that there could be this kind of opportunity. One thing I think is exciting too is, not to really switch gears here, but the whole workforce development part of it as well. Historically, coming from the direct provider side, we've always found it very hard to find qualified candidates that were trained. If anybody's ever tried to look for a HERS rater or anything of that nature, it's not like there's a lot of them around, right? I mean, it's a smaller industry of technical professionals. I think the workforce. I'd like to hear a little bit about your thoughts on that, because to me, if I was a rating company, I would be chomping at the bit to get a hold of some trained, people that could perform this kind of work. So, maybe you could expand a little bit on the workforce development side of that, because to me, looking at it from a direct provider of rating side, that's an exciting development.
Yeah, there's $260 million ALRD, which is a long-handed term for like a request for proposal of sorts from the DOE to the states for the states to apply by the end of the year, for this $260 million, their allocation of $260 million in state energy program funds. And that's meant to go for on-the-job training for contractors and for energy professionals and energy auditors to perform the work scopes associated with the administration of those rebates we talked about before. On top of that, in the spring, we're going to there's another $40 million, which averages about $1 million or $2 million for a state, for specifically for energy auditor training that calls out HERS rater training. So for training providers, the need is going to be great. So if I was a HERS rater and the BER was my provider, I'd start asking the question of how can I be a trainer, and how can we utilize this trainer base of longstanding practitioners to now move up those field verifiers into rater roles, right? Let's start upskilling, or the local person that was just doing an audit here, doing a lot of code testing, wasn't really a rater. We run into this a lot where people are out running around with blower doors that may have gone through rater training but have not continued with their applications and haven't gotten their CEUs, and they haven't, they've kind of just let their certifications lapse. And I can say this because I am somebody standing here with a lapsed ResNet HERS providership, as well as BPI Energy Auditor and Quality Control Inspector certifications. It's time for us to, revamp our cert credentials and learn how to teach it.
Yeah, I think you make a good point too. I mean, if there was ever a time for a rater or a rating company to really invest in education, now is the time, right? I mean, if your people, have just been primarily doing code compliance testing, and they really haven't ever looked into, they weren't ever doing any retrofit stuff. They don't really know how to approach it. Maybe some infrared training, maybe some, more training from a standpoint of just understanding how a HERS rating works. I mean, this is the prime time to do that, right? Because the opportunities are going to come, and they're going to be, snatched up by the people who are ready to take that. And, as a training provider ourselves, we find that extremely important to make sure that you're in tune, in skill, and, maybe you need a refresher, or, there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to that. But, now is the time to really invest in it seems like, there's going to be some opportunity for some, also trained professionals to come into the market that potentially could work for, other raters or rating companies as well. So great points, and thanks for elaborating on that.
So Xavier, I want to go back to a point that you kind of teased maybe when we first introduced you to the pod here 10 minutes ago, which was how, we're going to do it differently this time. So I know that there are some people who have been around in this industry long enough to remember, the stimulus funding that came out in 2008, 2009, part of the IRA funding, if anyone remembers that. Basically, for those who are too young to remember it, there was a giant financial collapse, and, you might have known a family member who lost their house or lost their job around 2008, 2009. And, basically one of the answers that this country came up with was a tremendous stimulus package that went to, energize the economy. And one of the target sectors was the building performance industry. And so there was a not insignificant amount of money that went towards training new raters, training new BPI certified professionals, training weatherization contractors and, people who are going to do air sealing and insulation work and things like that. And I think a critique of that was that it was almost too much too fast. There was a lot of money that went into the sector for training new professionals. And here's the deal: I was a beneficiary of this. So
Me too. Yeah,
whenever
me too.
people say, "Oh, that was just wasted money," it's like, well, wait a second. I'm going to raise my hand right here. I was a new college grad who ended up getting linked up with an organization that received a lot of that money, and as a result, I was able to level up my skills. Xavier, it sounds like you were as well. And so, I don't want to just say, I think it's cynical to a fault to just say, oh, it was a big waste of money. Like that's I think a lazy answer that doesn't really look at the broader picture of all the different professionals who came about because of that. But, I still think we could all agree that there still are probably some lessons learned. So what's your take? How do you think that we're better prepared this time around in order to make use of the funding that's coming through the IRA for workforce development?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great. I'm glad we circled back to that for sure. I mean, listen, in 2007, I lost my job I was a banker, and with the market collapse of Lehman Brothers, I woke up one day and I just didn't have a job. I had a wife and 3 kids on a big, beautiful lake in Medford, New Jersey, and I couldn't afford the oil going into my house. So somebody came in and did an energy audit on my house, sealed and insulated it. And, it changed my life. I'm like, wow, I can build a career out of this. And then the IRA funds, at that time, the IRA funds came and I was able to help, communicate within the marketplace what the difference between an energy auditor and a HVAC contractor, and fill the needs with the modeling paperwork and do inspections, same kind of deal. But the difference this time is that it was too much too fast, like you said, and there was a real focus on getting butts in seats. Let's just pull people off the unemployment line and through these various resources and just put them in a class and hope they do well. And there was a real focus on money being spent on traditional brick and mortar activities, like every community college bought themselves a shed of sorts.
Yeah.
But some folks really did the work well. They got mobile training trailers that they were deployed, and they took this opportunity, like we did, Chris, to make a career out of it. So we don't want to make those same mistakes again. So I see in this opportunity to be more of a jobs first mentality. We're seeing that through opportunities with both Service Year Alliance and AmeriCorps Vista type programs. We have an AmeriCorps Vista running right now up in Maine. Haley Champagne's doing an amazing job organizing that state around energy efficiency, both in new and existing construction. There's also the registered apprenticeship. We have one of the first registered apprenticeship programs with the Department of Labor. We're actually looking to be intermediary sponsors. We applied for intermediary sponsorship in Maine and Virginia. And what that does is that puts us on par with, in a legitimate way, like plumbers, electricians, and the communities, the trades that we serve, where there's a progressive path for somebody to enter as a career path. No more is it just, are you going to take a 5-day class, somewhere and get a credential. Now with, the advent of online education, the online training, short 5 to 10 minute video modules to get a lot of the thermodynamics and a lot of the prerequisite information out of the way. So when you show up on a job site, or you have a job and you go to work during that day and you complete those same tasks, you and your employer can get credit for that. So I think it's a jobs first mentality. So we're actually investing this money directly into the trades labor force. And, and we're also relying upon, there's, nobody has to go out and start over from scratch. There's no necessary reason why you should try to reinvent the wheel, because there's lots of training providers that have been around a long time, like the BER, that can help any practitioner, no matter if you're in business for yourself or you want to go work for them, or you want to, just help your community. The BER has the resources for you to do that. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to make your own curriculum up. You can just build relationships with your existing provider, and you can, whomever that may be, and you can, work together, because we are, the ResNet community, it has been not only very, just welcoming with all of the way the board handles, the way the board has initiatives with like the Emerging Leadership Committee and others, and the conferences themselves and the ongoing working groups that they facilitate with all the code, with all of the, standards committees and the board meetings. And it's just such a great system, but it's not too big. It's just the perfect size for us all to work together. And it's had so many great people coming in and out of it from different walks of life, like Sandy Adamatis from the Appraisal Institute and others that, from other places in the economy, that will make our industry sustainable. Because once the rebates run away, where are we going to be? How is this going to live on its own? And the reality is, it's going to live on its own through the mortgage industry. It's going to live on its own through the real estate community and real estate valuations. And, an energy audit will be a trifold sitting on the desk of a real estate office as part of the transaction. I mean, that's just
the
one
goal,
of the
right?
things.
Is that
Right?
really this is the last federal
Big leaf.
stimulus interjection that really needs to be given to really professionalize and sustain for the long run this element of the economy. Because like you're saying, Xavier, ultimately these are things that should be standards of practice. When homes transact, there should be an accounting for how much the utility bills are going to be, because when we look at it in isolation, principal, interest, property taxes, and insurance, and we're not looking at this as a wild card. Take my house, for example. 1927, 2.5-story house in Detroit. When I bought it, didn't have a stitch of insulation in it. Had a, poorly installed 80% furnace. I've done a lot in order to bring it forward. If I were to go and sell this house today, there's some ways to be able to get some credit, the green appraisal addendum and whatnot, but it's not a standard of practice. So, if both my neighbor's home and my home were on the market at the exact same time, roughly the same size, roughly the same, features, architecturally and whatnot, same number of bedrooms, baths, all, same geographic area, I wouldn't necessarily get the credit that I deserve. Really, my home is going to be more affordable to be able to really sustain a family in, as a result of some of the things that I've done, and we're still just not to the point where that's mainstream. So how do you see the provisions of the IRA kind of taking us in that direction? We've got, well, not 10 years anymore, but we've got about 9 years now. And frankly speaking, a lot of the legislation is only really materializing into actionable steps from the various federal departments. And my understanding is a lot of the states have just recently gotten this money, and they're taking a year to figure out exactly how to build their plan to deploy it. So let's just say we got about 8 years starting in 2024 in order to make this happen. Does that sound right? And what do you think is likely to come out in that 8-year period of time that really does make this more of a mainstream and sustainable, just part of doing business in America?
I'm thinking the system on the whole and the government interdiction of money into the marketplace and how that impacts the individuals around it. And one provision that is, throughout this, throughout these rebates is income eligibility, right? It's imperative that this money be spent to lift up those that were previously disenfranchised from other federal investments of the past. And I think inherently, by making sure that we're very intentional about how this money gets spent and who benefits from it, will provide a level of sustainability to the ecosystem on a whole. Because if it's fair and it's just in this transition, this energy transition that we're in, then it'll become systemic and it'll be sustainable. There's lots of other non-energy benefits, right? We know that the utility bills impact, low income households much greater than it does of moderate to high income. It's just a larger chunk of their monthly budget. but there's other benefits, right? There's there's resiliency benefits for those living in rural Appalachia, like I live. If you're able to consume less than that, God forbid, if you can get a battery system and some solar panels, then you're off grid. That, the cost of that material wise is very similar to natural gas generators, even on on a smaller scale, just to keep the refrigerator going so you don't lose the precious food that you need. So there's the resiliency factor. And when we talk specifically about retrofit, which we've done a real good job in new construction, is abating any health and safety issues going forward in a home. So new construction, really, with these new codes, have given us a really great. We know that new housing stock, well, at least we hope that the new housing stock coming out is not going to have potential health and safety issues or comfort issues that are growing ever more important to the younger generations. Um, in retrofit, we have such a huge market opportunity to improve the quality of life for the most vulnerable populations through health and safety measures. And we can mirror that, with a HERS rater's help, we can tie into that the healthcare costs associated with a moldy, wet crawl space. We can associate the doctor's visits and by tracking over a period of time. And so when we talk about this 9 years or this period of time, we have a lot that we can benchmark today, that we need to get benchmarked today. We need to be very intentional about that. And then we can then make some assumptions, or we can not even make assumptions, but we can have some facts down the road when we go and remeasure, because that's what we do. We're in the measurement business. And even if you're on the HVAC side of the house and that's all you do is HVAC, there's lots of opportunity there for you to start measuring things you've never measured before. And some of those provisions are written into the various guidance of all of the, the 100-page plus page document. And I think if we are real intentional about it and we, use a community-based focus and we allow the ownership at the community level. So if you're a HERS rater and you're in a neighborhood and you serve your region, that regionalized approach is where where this benefit needs to be owned. This isn't something that we, as somebody can come. DC's not going to come down through their state energy office and sprinkle cash. It's got to be owned by those practitioners on the ground. We have great ideas on what people can do, but it's not our ownership. It's got to be owned at the local level. And that way you have everybody's buy-in and everybody's voice. And that's how it's going to be sustainable. And it won't be like, previous investments that actually did the opposite and disenfranchised people.
Great point. It's a great points. Another thing about the, existing and retrofit market that no one ever thinks about is that, improving this home stock, yes, it has tons of benefits, right? Energy efficiency, better for the environment, better indoor air quality, etc., health and safety. But, it also alleviates the problem of this housing stock being abandoned, and, just left to waste. And I think, with what is the last number? 6 million houses we're short right now, in the United States. I think that should play into the conversation as well, and no one ever really talks about that. But you upgrade, like Chris upgraded his home. I mean, that thing's going to be there for another 150 years. You know what I mean? And I think that makes a difference in the long term, has a great impact, not just the short term, not that it's not important, but you know what I mean? Just the short term or midterm benefits.
Yeah, this is just a drop in the bucket, right? The amount of homes that this funding can actually do relative to what we need to do is nothing. And, I am thankful that there is, it's almost like the perfect storm where you have not just this homes and HERA funding that we have, but we also have weatherization. Low-income weatherization itself has been given, a large, infusion for various things. And then you've got your conservation block grants, and then the EPA programs, and the Department of Labor with the workforce trade programs. If we can braid all of this together, and we can, in a real intentional way, we can make a huge impact.
Yeah, so let's take a step back really quick, again. And so, we touched on the 45L because that's like the easy one that raters know about. And then we talked about some of the workforce development funds that are out there. Maybe let's talk about some of the things that you think maybe people might be overlooking, in particularly the ResNet industry, coming out of the IRA? I mean, obviously, you know, I look at the homes program as being a huge opportunity. I look at the high efficiency electric rebate program being a huge opportunity. But you know, there's other things that are in. I mean, really, it's a huge document. It's a sweeping set of package of different, you know, opportunities that are coming out to our industry. So what else from that from the IRA, or do you really have your eye on, Xavier?
That's a great question. You know, having gone through the process with, you know, the getting this introduced into the, you know, coming out of the various forms of legislation that it's been, and getting it introduced into the, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act, and getting it passed, and then working with DOE on the guidance, and the, you know, their request for information. You know, there is so much into it. It's a matter of, you know, partnerships, right? There's so many different, you know, not just, you know, before the Inflation Reduction Act was what we call the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the Inflation Reduction Act, the IIJA. There's, you know, a litany of various programs embedded in there that all kind of breed together into one giant workforce activity that can, you know, solve this labor crisis that we have in the United States. We have to look at, you know, we're looking at a new way of doing business that includes, you know, career advancement. So there's a $10 million bucket. Nothing's been released on that I'm aware of yet. That's just career skills training grants. So that's an opportunity for a ResNet HERS to teach BPI, building science principles, in a high school shop class for a day, once or twice a year. That can be, you know, there's places that can insert, you know, some of these, you know, more basic ideas of code compliance and building science, and how, you know, in how that affects the various trades and industries and professions. You know, accountants need kind of education. That's something that HERS raters have done with these 45L tax credits and understanding the paperwork. It may come down to Energy Star certifications and how to get that paperwork in, and adding things to the file for that home, to stacking against that, you know, label that's in the breaker box maybe, and the package that homeowner or occupant has as it relates to the conditions of that house, and it's, you know, how much energy, how much natural resources it consumes or wastes, or and the application of projects into it. So it really, you know, the rater can really run in at various times in various ways, which is a unique thing because it gives them the opportunity to be able to do the parts that they do best or they want to do the most. You know, we can look at this opportunity of growth in our industry on a whole as a chance to not kill ourselves 50, 60 hours a week. You know, raters, I know all myself and my friends, we appreciate the autonomy that we have to be able to do this job and raise our families and go work at our campgrounds and these other great things. So, and I know that's an attitude that the whole industry shares, because our own health and our own well-being is important. And I think the industry and the workers and the employers, certainly the employers, and I certainly my employer, and I'm thankful every day for that, knows that it's, you know, we can't just keep throwing people in attics 5-6 days a week without any kind of career advancement and think that they're going to, you know, stick around.
It's a great point.
You know,
it's a really good point, Xavier. You know, if there was anything that's been, you know, and you may call a nascent business, right? I mean, you could, compared to a lot of other businesses. We're small. We're, you know, there's not a lot of us. You know, I mean, it's the career advancement is a little tough. You know, and I think these different avenues create different opportunities, right? Hey, you're back. It's okay, man.
Hey,
it happened.
It's the hills of West Virginia.
Understood.
I've got not only, because we want to be a community resiliency center here at Camp Holly, we're getting solar and batteries, and we've got really efficient tiny homes, but we have duplicatable internet. So when the Frontier's down, the Starlink picks up, and then when the Starlink's down, the Frontier picks up. So there's redundancy even in our communications. So if a natural disaster happens here in Webster County, we can stack FEMA trailers, and we know we'll have power, water, and communication. I mean, that's huge,
Awesome.
right?
Awesome.
Sandy, you want to go back to what you were saying?
Yeah, basically what I was just saying is I think it's, again, we keep talking about opportunity, and, the opportunities, again, with career advancement, I think is important to grow this business to where it really needs to be. Things like we were talking about a little bit earlier, like I do believe that one day cost of ownership is going to be at the table. Now you buy a new home, you can get a HERS rating. If you have a HERS rating, you know what the energy use is. Go buy a used home and see if you can find that out without a HERS rating. And I think one day you're going to see this type of, this type of thing being mainstreamed in the very near future, and that's just going to create more demand, more opportunity, and like you said, greater career mobility. Everybody, 15 years ago it wasn't so bad climbing in the attics, but now for even like me, I'm past those days. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
and it's a great opportunity for builders or people that
Yep.
were in construction, that were in HVAC, like that don't want to swing that hammer anymore.
Yeah.
This is a neat segue opportunity. I've trained lots of folks that use this almost as like a retirement gig. And it's appealing to people fresh out, younger people, because it's exciting and there is a passion to save the climate and and make a better world for ourselves, and all of those. People want to feel mission oriented. I know all of us are really mission oriented in our careers, and they
Absolutely.
need to know that there is an opportunity to go. If you're just a rating field inspector right now, you can be that. You're the next up to be the pro in the room, and you can go to your local home builders association and do a dog and pony show about energy efficiency. And in many of the states, they've never heard that before.
I don't think
We're
we talk enough about that, Xavier.
we don't. No.
We do not talk enough in our industry about the difference we make. And I think we make a mistake when we do that. You know what I mean? And I don't mean like, pounding on the chest kind of thing, but I mean, we need to talk about it. And I think us talking about it in forums like this, and what we do is as, building performance professionals brings people into the industry, right? Because it's not just about, dragging a blower door in and taking a test and a number, but you're making a difference, for a safe home and a home with great indoor air quality and well-insulated home that gives comfort and it helps save the environment. I mean, what greater mission do we have than that?
Yeah, the think of the monumental changes that our listeners have made in their the business practices of their builders, right? And
Oh
how
yeah.
much higher quality now that all these housing stocks. And I would venture to say, and I'm just guessing here, is that we collectively save more kilowatts or BTUs, or I'll leave it open, than solar. It's better to
I would agree
save
with
a
that.
dollar, but because solar is sexy and insulation is itchy, we get overlooked sometimes. Well, now this is really our time as an industry to show the value in an appealing way, because people can feel it. You can feel it if you're in Chris's house. When he moved, the day he moved in, to the now that and to go in again now, you would notice a difference. You can feel it.
Sure.
And if you're living in it, you can see it on your bill. And electric rates are going through the roof. They've almost like doubled in the last 10 years.
Yeah, that actually, Xavier, when I was in West Virginia teaching that energy code class, that was really one of the things that resonated with a lot of the students. Was just they may not be big time environmentalists, but they could feel it themselves that the bills had gone up substantially, and so all this energy code business, it made sense to them really based off of the economics of it. So.
Sure.
Well, good. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I mean,
Awesome.
Xavier, is there any like other element of the IRA that you think people should be paying attention to?
I think they should just be, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I do think that they should get involved,
Okay.
and I
And
think
is it
everybody.
like now's the time, or should people just keep their eyes open over the next year?
So the DOE is really, really been great about posting every current, program opportunity or grant opportunity. Some of them are competitive, some are formulas, some are just looking for feedback. There's opportunities for people to be trade allies, provide technical service and technical assistance in various ways. So, it behooves everybody to, follow the DOE. You can just put in the search engine DOE home, home energy rebates, or you can come to the ResNet conference and you can hear us talk all about it. And we're going to have my partner Leo Jansen and I are going to do a session around a lot of this information. So we're excited, to be able to, and our conference, the Building Performance Association has its national conference next year in Minneapolis. We're having a regional event coming up here up in Massachusetts in November. And we always constantly having calls and webinars. Just getting tuned in is the best thing. And really think about, you as the leader, the rater is the leader in the community. And, that can start with you getting out there and teaching some building science principles. We'll give you a free curriculum. We'll help you, coach you along your way on how to do it. And, and then you can move up and start teaching other things, get with a provider, a training provider, and go down that road, because that's what we need. We need leaders, and we need everybody to identify their market opportunity in their markets as they come about. And the only way you can do that is paying attention now to as the information comes out and educating yourself.
That's great. I'm looking forward to seeing you at both those events, by the way. All three of them, by the way.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And, the ground level stuff, that's what we got to really bring this money down to the ground and say, we're hosting the class, or we're doing the training, we're working with the student, and we're doing it in an equitable, just, and diverse way.
Okay. Sandy, any final thoughts here for Xavier?
No, been excited to be working with you, Xavier. And I think all your points are awesome. We really appreciate you coming on the little BERcast here, and I look forward to seeing you in this upcoming event in New England and at the ResNet conference shortly down the road.
It's going to be great, and winter's coming, so you might see me in Florida. Who knows?
Hey, come on!
It's mighty cold here at Camp Holly.
I'll still have the same tan, by the way. But more than welcome. Stop by.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I really appreciate you, Sandy, and this has been great, and I really love this. Has been one of the best conversations, and I appreciate you having me.
Good. Well, we'll be excited to have you back in the future. Thanks a lot,
sir.
Xavier.
We'll talk soon. See ya.
Thanks.
This is where you just get to know a little bit about the two guys that are behind the cast, a little bit of their ideas and philosophy on not our industry necessarily, but just maybe adjacent to our industry, or maybe even things that are totally unrelated. So, this is our little 5-minute musing here, and we're going to be talking about today my experience. Sandy, did you know that I went to West Virginia and I taught an energy code training course in West Virginia? Can you believe that?
I know that, and I believe it. I heard it was awesome.
Not just one, we taught 3 in West Virginia, which is cool. I think a lot of people go, wait, there's an energy code in West Virginia? And I mean, I'm not just trying to make
where's West Virginia? No, just kidding.
It's there, is it the Southeast? Is it the Mid-Atlantic, or is it the Northeast, or none of the above?
I don't know. It's almost in the Rust Belt, I think.
Okay, right? So it's like Great Lakes or something like that. Then, I don't know. I mean, it's a
lot of coal there.
Yeah. Pittsburgh, Kentucky, Ohio, Virginia, Maryland-ish. It's a lot of different things. Yeah. Beautiful state. This is my first time really getting to see it, and man, it was incredible. If I could live multiple lives, I would absolutely love to have a place there. Definitely a very interesting place. And they have a new energy code as of last year. They're on an amended version of the 2015 IECC, which was a step up. They were previously on the 2009 IECC. So, like blower door testing is now mandatory. Duct leakage testing was previously still mandatory within the 2009 IECC, but our word on the ground talking to builders and code officials there was they didn't know that it was mandatory.
No enforcement.
There wasn't a lot of enforcement. So, hopefully our training was really a catalyst, to really getting people to understand, the energy code, the value of it. Again, topic number one, we were talking about, carbon index, and, that's maybe a little bit too taboo within West Virginia. But I'll tell you what was just cost. The
Sure.
cost of energy has gone up significantly, and particularly electricity. So, in West Virginia, I mean, yeah, there's some well-to-do people that are moving in, but a lot of regular folk in West Virginia, this is not a wealthy area of the country by any means.
No.
And so,
and they've lost a lot of jobs. So, I mean, it's like, I could see where that would have a major impact,
Right. So, costs do matter, there basically, and so honestly, we were able to get that message across, I think, more palpably there than just about anywhere else. Was, hey, this is why this matters, is that, people have to live in these homes and they have to pay these bills. And that seemed to resonate with pretty much everybody who was in the room. But, the other kind of funny thing about this trip, Sandy, was that, I flew into to Baltimore, and, I'd rented a car ahead of time, and I'm a cheapskate. I knew I was just going to be there for a couple of days. I just got, whatever, a compact or something like that, because I wasn't trying to splash out. Well, they were out of internal combustion engine cars. They didn't have any when I showed up at the airport. All they had was electric vehicles. And so they were like, oh, would you like, I guess you'll have to take one. I mean, it was sort of like, would you like one? And
yeah, I don't think, it doesn't
would
sound
you like one,
choice.
or would you rather just not go anywhere and spend the night here in the parking garage? So, I took an electric car and I had a choice. There was a Chevy Bolt. There were, a couple Hyundais. But I chose to go with the Tesla because honestly, oh my God, it's such a sort of a political thing. Tesla's, I'm from Detroit, so you got to understand, big three represent. I'm inclined towards, the more domestic produced EVs for that reason. But I never had a chance to drive a Tesla. I wanted to see what all the hype was about. So, gotten my Model 3 Tesla. And
what color was it? I'm just curious.
It was red. It was like cherry red.
Okay.
It was kind of hot. I don't particularly like the styling of Tesla vehicles. I think they look kind of dorky, personally.
They look like pregnant roller skates to me, but I mean, I don't know. And I never got it.
I don't know. Yeah, they're kind of like, I don't know, like what a kid's drawing of like a whale looks like, like big and bulbous and thing. I know. And I'm sure there's kind of like an aerodynamics element of that, like they've engineered sort of, the wind coefficients, and there's some value to it. But I don't know. I'm not just being a homer about it. Like, I would much rather have a Mach-E from Ford compared to any Tesla that I've ever seen.
Agreed.
And it's not just me being a homer. Yeah, they look okay. Anyways, but I got in it, and so here's what I can say. They were fun to drive. It was a fun car, but not in the way that I think most people would assume. Like, yeah, they are fast, super fast. Like, if you want to like pass somebody on the highway, like, yeah, like,
was it faster than the car we had when we were out? What was the car we had when we were out? The Beamer. That thing was a dog.
No, the BMW. That was. I mean, number one, it was a rental Beamer, so I'm sure it was sort of the lowest model. But man, that thing, it sucked compared to the Tesla in terms of pickup and like passing ability and things like that. But I got to be honest, driving that Tesla, it kind of felt a little bit like a glorified go-kart.
Zoom.
Yeah, like it was fast, but it was like Mario Kart, like kind of a thing, and so like.
Wait, let me ask the most important question: did you have the urge to stop at Starbucks?
No.
Driving a Tesla. Okay, I'm just checking.
No. Okay. Do the two go hand in hand? I don't know.
Yeah, man, it's like always like three Teslas at least in my Starbucks.
Okay, well, I mean, then I guess you got to go and get a Tesla because you're a Starbucks guy. So. But look, here's the deal. I'm encouraged by electric vehicles. My experience, if you want to pass someone on the highway super fast, I didn't think that like the pickup was sort of like equal to the force on the pedal. So it was either like going at a normal level or like boom, like you're going like as fast as a bolt of lightning. And I didn't like that. I'd like to try some other electric vehicles to see if they have the exact same experience. I would like to know whether or not the interior ride push up, and does it feel like driving a car? Does it feel like driving a go-kart? So, one of these days I'm going to have to try out some of the other manufacturers to see what it's like.
What was the braking like? Because they say the braking is odd.
Well, you take your foot off the gas, or the go, I should say. There is no gas, so you take off the accelerator, and basically you start to decelerate very quickly because the car takes advantage of regenerative braking, and so it's more or less. Did you find that
awkward? Someone that drives a regular truck. Did you find it awkward?
Very much so. Now, apparently, you can turn that off, and so I'll say there's a lot of settings that come in Tesla.
Well, does that cut your range down to like 4 miles or something if you shut it off? Or
good question. I never turned it off because honestly, that's probably the biggest downside that I can say of the experience was I had to power up, multiple times. Like I drove from, Baltimore to this training facility in Ranson, West Virginia. And it was, I got there, but then I had to fill up basically immediately the next day. And then, the day after we were driving, I don't know, 220 miles away, and it's a little bit mountainous. I get it, but I had to fill up twice,
wow.
during that, just going 220 miles, in order to get there safely, because I knew I was going to be out in the middle of kind of the boonies once I got there. So, I mean, to a certain extent, I was sort of hedging a little bit just to make sure that I wasn't like totally out. But, like I got to be honest, until there's range to go, 400, 450 miles, I'm going to be hard pressed to choose one of these, not because every single day I need to do this, but like, especially for rental cars, like I typically cover ground, like Sandy, you and I, we were at the ResNet conference, or the ResNet board meeting in Minneapolis in August. And then we drove to Iowa, and so, we had to go some distance, and that's just, it's not that big, in fact, in some ways I got to liking it. I would pull over into my Sheetz gas station, which has, just a fleet of these, Tesla superchargers, and it's a good deal for them because, man, once you're there for, half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you wind up getting a lot of snacks and stuff? Like,
yeah.
See, that's no good for me, man. I can't have an electric car like that. I'd be 800 pounds,
Right. That's going to kill your range too if you balloon to that point too. So, but,
well, there you go. It's a lose for me, man.
So, I mean, actually, on that topic, that's my biggest problem that I have with my experience. So, I again drove this Tesla to the middle of a camp in the center of West Virginia, and when I pulled in, it was nighttime, and I backed into my space, and there was some rock basically in the driveway of this camp. Thanks a lot.
Like a big rock, a little rock.
Yeah, it was like not a big rock, but big enough. And I have to say thanks a lot, Xavier. He was our last guest here on segment number 2. This was his camp. He's keeping rocks in the middle of his driveway for his campers. Come on, man, get with it. So, anyways, I blew out a tire going over like this like medium-sized rock or whatever that I couldn't see with any of the cameras, and it was the middle of the night or whatever. So I'm like, all right, well, whatever. I guess I gotta change the tire. That sucks. There's no spare tire.
Save weight, Chris.
Yeah, I know. Save weight, save costs. Put a couple extra bucks in Elon's pocket for SpaceX or whatever. I gotta be honest. Like, that's not cool with me.
Did it have the little pump thing, like, or was it really like blown?
No. I was like, thankfully, the camp had a whatever pneumatic, sort of pump or whatever, compressor, style pump, so I was able to fill up my tire that way, and I just nursed it back the whole way. I drove from West Virginia back to Detroit.
How many times do you have to fill up the tire?
Well, it kind of worked out as many times as I had to go and fill the battery back up. So it actually wasn't as bad as it could have been. But
I think that's what Tesla's customer service would tell you.
yeah, right. Oh yeah, just you'll have to fill up 3 times a day, and so just go and fill up your tire 3 times a day too. But anyways, I here's what I'll say.
Are you ready to buy a Tesla?
Well, no, I'm not, and it doesn't have anything to do with Elon Musk and whether I like him or don't. I don't care. I'm a little bit neutral.
Are you ready to buy an electric vehicle?
I can't do it until they're about at least 350 miles of range. I just don't think it really makes any sense because, I got family in Chicago. I want to get in my car and I want to go all the way there.
Sure.
I don't really want to have to pull over 2 or 3 times.
Eat 3 sandwiches on the way there. Yeah. Well,
I don't have a problem with that. I would eat 3
well,
sandwiches.
That's true. Skinny guys.
Yeah.
Well, I have some good news on this subject for you, though.
Okay, great.
I have some really good news. Toyota is developing a solid-state battery that they're saying is going to go over 900 miles by 2027.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. So, I'm glad you said that because, number one, I'll believe it when I see it, but at the same time, I do believe it. So, there's a lot of hand-wringing and politics about EVs and whatnot, and oh my God, we're going too hard, too fast into this. Personally, even though I didn't love my Tesla experience, there's no doubt in my mind that this is the future of vehicles. Just because I do believe that the battery technology will advance. I do think we'll figure out how to recycle the batteries and hopefully manufacture them with more responsible materials. Right now it's a pretty dirty industry. As green as it supposedly is for emissions.
Yeah.
You got a lot of people who are digging with their bare hands through some pretty nasty labor environments in order to pull out all that cobalt. And so hopefully we get to the point where there's some more responsible battery technology, better recycling of those batteries. But I have no doubt that this is the future. I
looked into that, by the way, and that's kind of a myth about the recycling. So I looked pretty deep into that because, you and I had this conversation before. And, it's actually, there's enough recycling right now that they can't get enough batteries to keep the plants going.
Okay.
So that is not true. And do you know that over 90% of it's recycled? So yeah, there's some impact. There's some, and there's other uses, right? So they can take those batteries and use them as power stations, or places to store energy, and they'll live a life on beyond without doing anything to them. Mm-hmm. But so some of that is like kind of a myth, like an urban myth that, oh my God, we're killing the environment, then we're just throwing them away into a giant cave someplace. That's actually not happening. There is actually more capacity than we have batteries to recycle at the present time. But the interesting thing about the solid state technology that I was talking about before that Toyota is developing is that not only is it a 900 plus mile range, but even at total empty, it's 10 minutes to charge.
Yeah,
that's a game changer, man. That's a game changer.
Totally. Yeah, because honestly, if number one, if you're legitimately 900 miles of range, I could drive to Atlanta on one charge, and I wouldn't have to stop at all except, I'd want to anyways, just to kind of stretch my legs and everything
and be charged in 10 minutes. That's incredible, really.
Honestly, that's the kind of thing that I know is going to happen. So I would just say, I do think, is it going to replace literally every single industry and every single vehicle tomorrow or in 5 years? No, because, there's still going to be heavy vehicles, mining stuff up in, Alaska, and the batteries are going to perform worse because it's really cold and they're just so energy intensive that there may still be some legitimate need for fuel-based vehicles. But I got to be honest, all this scaremongering about EVs, I gotta be honest, I think it's one of those, it's kind of like the people who probably when the car first came out here in Detroit with Henry Ford, and people said, nah, it'll never work, and we're going to stick with our horses. Honestly, I think it's that exact same type of correlation.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that.
Okay, all right.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because I think that the technology is there and will be there. I don't know if our grid can handle it. I mean, just again in the news 2 weeks ago, they were telling people not to plug in their electric cars in California because the grid was wonking. So again, and I shared that article with you where I think it was Portland, where they were putting the giant extension cords on the telephone poles and they're hanging all over the place charging EVs. I mean, that's not a solution. So I think that distribution is an issue, but I do think our grid. I mean, if you look at any of the numbers, and I'm not talking about from some electric car hater. I'm talking about actual numbers from like electricity companies and things like that. They're saying that in order to make the complete transition to electric, we would need to double the size of our grid. So, I mean, when you think of it on those terms and on that level, I think that electric cars are going to be great, and there's going to be, you got your first adopters, then it starts to take, and I think more and more you're going to see it, but I think it's going to take longer than what we're saying because I don't think we have the infrastructure yet to really support it. And now we're talking about more demand. To go back to our segment one, talk about electrification. With more demand goes higher price. So, to tie the whole thing in together there a little bit for the podcast, I think that it presents a challenge.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, it's something that we're obviously, I mean, I live here in Detroit, right now there's a UAW strike going on. We got former politicians coming to say, all the problems with, the with auto industry are because of this electrification business. Here's the deal, monumental shifts in technology and infrastructure, they don't happen in a period of years. And I think that's if there's one thing, Sandy, I could just say, for our industry is, to put a kind of a bow on this whole episode is things take time, and yep. That, and I know that doesn't satisfy the people who are really, really, really concerned about climate change. And look, I'm concerned, but,
rightfully so.
But despite my concerns and despite all of our concerns, if every car in America switched to electricity, number one, they wouldn't all be exceptionally green. There's supposedly were some emissions reductions even in West Virginia. I looked up a couple calculators. There's no really good consensus calculators on emission reductions with electric vehicles. So I'm not even showing them because I think they're a little bit, it's hard to know exactly what you're looking at. But regardless, most of them did say there was a benefit to driving my Tesla through West Virginia compared to just regular, petroleum, based gas. But if we all switched over to Teslas or Ford Mach-E's tomorrow, none of us would be able to drive them because we just don't have the capacity for it. We don't have the charging infrastructure for it. And, again, to your point about, this pilot program in Portland that was like it had chargers hanging off of electrical poles, on the side of the road. There's not going to be enough of those to go around. Whether or not that's a good idea or not, we could talk about that at a different point. But I think about going back to college, where I parked in a big giant parking lot in the tundra of East Lansing, Michigan, and in the dead of winter, how am I going to charge that thing? The battery is just going to be dried up through it being excessively cold. And there's just not enough charging infrastructure to go around. And, this is kind of coming to a head with a lot of like zero energy ready homes, their version 2 multifamily program, the 2021 IECC, FIAS. A lot of these programs that are really meant for buildings are now requiring some amount of investment in electrical vehicle infrastructure as well. And that's a premium cost. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying it is a premium cost to a developer. So again, you want affordable housing. Well, it's got to be reasonably affordable to build, or it's never going to get built. And so all of a sudden now they have to consider these things that had nothing. They have nothing to do with the building shell. They have nothing to do with the heating and cooling equipment or water heating equipment, lights and appliances, et cetera. Everything else that we typically consider within energy efficiency programs. Now these things are having to be considered. So It's going to take a minute,
It'll be a while.
But I believe it's happening. It's coming. It is.
I mean, one thing that
coming.
nobody ever thinks about is the millions of homes that are based on apartment style. How are we going to deliver that kind of infrastructure there? I mean, the landlord's not going to let you have a one of those Ford Chargers with the wire hanging out your window to go to your car to charge it. I mean, that's going to be a safety hazard. So, I mean, there's a lot to go, but I do think it's a great technology, and I do believe you're right. Eventually, that will be, it'll be like the Jetsons. First we're going to drive electric cars, and then we're going to be driving, flying cars. But I do think that there's a long road ahead, and I think I understand why they keep putting dates on everything. I get it, by 2035, but I just think it sets everybody up for disappointment. How about we look at it in a different long-term strategy and be honest? I mean, a great in between is hybrid vehicles. So I think we should push more hybrid vehicles along with electric vehicles, because I think it's a great in between technology that has a lot of savings and still gets us partially all the way. Our plug-in hybrids are even better, right? But so I think that sometimes people who were really into energy efficiency and building performance, and we have no patience. Like, we want everything in 10 years, and like, it's not even possible to build a grid in 10 years, So we just got to think about it there. But I agree with you 100%, Chris. I'm sorry you had a bad experience with your Tesla. Maybe next time rent a Ford Mach-E. You might like it better.
Yeah, they didn't have one, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I mean, so, I guess until the next episode, Tom Brady, I ain't gonna be going in a Tesla up to the mountains of Colorado. So
Well, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but you're not as good looking as Tom Brady either. So,
man, that guy ain't got nothing on me. You kidding? All right. So we're gonna go ahead and put a bow on this one. Thanks a lot, Sandy. This was fun.
Awesome, Chris.
Again, episode 2 of BERcast in the bag. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be in touch.
Take care, everyone.